Oh, yeah.
That's all right. I'm going to have a bonk, and then I'm going to go for a wee, and then we're going to have a look at Stephen Hassan's bite model of authoritarian control. This can be... You can sort of apply stuff in here to... the reason why this is interesting, the reason why I like it, is because basically it states that anything can be a cult. That's my personal understanding of it. Is like we classically understand cults as a very like sort of limited set of things, whilst other groups often exhibit lots of cult-like behaviour, but we don't call them cults because they don't follow our prior definitions of what a cult may be. But when you truly look at the breakdown or definition of a cult, you find that actually within the definition, you see that there are opportunities for leaderless cults, spirituality-less cults, and as such, the existing ways of analysing or breaking down cult behaviour that we generally use, which don't take into account spirituality-less or leaderless cults, it often ignores this stuff. And it's important to understand how cults can exist without having religious elements or what we view as being typical cult characteristics. And to understand the signs, the symptoms, as per se, of what they can be. And I really like, this is like basically the most cohesive way of breaking down these areas of cult influence that I've ever seen. And a YouTuber much larger than me by the name of Mars Power likes to use it when analysing cult behaviour, and so does Jeff Holiday, both of who are huge fucking fans of. Huge fans. Yeah, like, there are definitely still limitations to this, and like, you know, it's yet to be peer reviewed, it's yet to be yada yada yada. But unlike most lists that you'll find on a website or a publication that will normally just be somebody's opinion of what a cult is, or will often have religious influences, so like, cult behavior involves taking you away from the doctrine of your local church and things like, yeah, I've literally seen that on like cult behavior lists, and you're like, well, what about that? That's not always the case. What about these religions that we view as cults? Undue influence is an act of persuasion that overcomes the free will and judgment of another person. People can be unduly influenced by deception, flattery, trickery, coercion, and other techniques, including hypnosis. In a court of law, undue influence is a legal term which involves a person or group taking advantage of their position of power over another person or persons. Just reminding us all that there is a legal term. Legal. Why do I say it like that? Why whenever I say the word legal, do I go like legal? Like exaggerate the word more. Unfortunately, undue influence rates low for most people as an imminent threat to a free society and happy families, but such an oversight is very costly in the manipulative hands of human traffickers, terrorist and violent extremist groups, charismatic cult leaders, highly controlling Bible-based groups masquerading as benevolent religions, multi-level marketers, political action cults, human potential hucksters, and even abusive spouses and parents. Undue influence is a major problem in today's world, and it's getting worse. When undue influence is used to cheat people out of their inheritance or property, break up families, deceive members into thinking that extreme shunning of close family members and friends is a loving act, demand that parents beat their children under the assumption that the Bible commands such harsh discipline, encourage people to break the law, turn adolescent girls and boys into slaves and prostitutes, kill innocent people, threaten parishioners with shunning if they report child molestation and domestic violence to the police or tell anyone about it, fly passenger planes into buildings, become involved in shady deals, or coerce parents into letting their children die because it is God's will. These kinds of influence are a significant threat to basic human rights and a free society. Undue influence seeks nothing less than to disrupt an individual's authentic identity and reconstruct it in the image of the cult leader. To compound the problem, society loses in the following three ways. Groups that practice undue influence as a means of controlling people often have tax-exempt or even charitable status, which means citizens pay the taxes for any properties they own and the services required to maintain those properties. See the cult of Mormonism. See the cult of Jehovah's Witnesses. See the cult of Scientology. While a group may receive billions of dollars from its members, they often do not put that money back into society to help people other than the cult leadership. See the demonic leaders of American evangelical churches. Let me find the guy. Here's my favorite actual demon. He has to be an actual demon. I'm not even joking. He's the sort of guy that would make me, like, you know, think maybe satanic ritual abuse is real, because this guy must be a demon. He must be. I'm not sure what else he could be. Not sure what else explains it. Or actually lizard people. No, I take it away, because lizard people are real. This guy is lizard people, definitely. If this guy isn't actually a devil, I don't know what is. He's so scary.
True that you want to fly.
Well, for example, that's really none of your business, but...
That's really none of your business, little girl. Now shut the fuck up before I eat your soul.
Isn't it the business of...
I gotta get this now. Hey, you listening to me? My wife thinks Inside Edition is... Oh, yeah. Now, thank you, Lord. Help me. Let me pray this thing.
Well, let me just ask you a really...
Like, either he has schizophrenia or he is possessed by a demon.
Hey, you listening to me? My wife thinks Inside Edition is...
Just need it zoomed in on nothing but his face for all of you.
Oh, yeah. Listen to me? My wife thinks Inside Edition is... Oh, yeah. Now, thank you, Lord. Help me.
Thank you, Lord. Help me.
Let me pray this thing.
Well, let me
Pray quick. Let me just pray quick. Look, he's a demon. Look at those eyes. Look, they're like the demon. They're demon eyes, right? Those are demon eyes.
question. A lot of people think...
Oh my god. They're like Emperor Palpatine. They're completely soulless and demonic and terrifying.
...coming for a preacher to live a life of luxury...
Has he blinked?
...to fly around in private jets.
Does he ever
What's your
blink?
response to that?
We have brought...
He's trying to force lightning it.
Listen, if there wasn't a camera here right now, I'd be blasting you with my force lightning.
over 100, let's see.
Oh, he blinked.
The latest figures just came out. 122 million people to the Lord Jesus Christ.
We just sent 122 million people to the Lord Jesus Christ.
Let me give you another example. Last May.
God, sorry you missed it. I'm so sorry. It was off cam. I'm so sorry you missed it.
Let me give you another example. Last May, I was scheduled for Lagos, Nigeria. That's a long...
You know, and I gotta go save them souls in Lagos. I need them for my soul, boy. I'm building the most powerful soul gem anyone's ever seen, so I can bring the Dark Lord Cthulhu back to this earth.
Long ways. I had a week off, and I was scheduled for Peru. And I prayed about it, and I thought, I'm not missing that dedication.
I'm not missing no souls.
Jerusalem. Without the airplane that we have that I bought from Tyler Perry, and I didn't pay anywhere. Tyler's one of the greatest guys. He made that airplane so cheap for me, I couldn't help but buy it.
Well,
He made that airplane so cheap for me. Who made it so cheap? He made it only... in fact, he gave me some souls. I gave him some of your puny mortal dollars, and he gave me some souls along with that plane.
He's so... I don't know how anyone can go to one of his sermons and think he's a good guy and not think he is anything other than the literal devil in human skin. How does he have people that think he's a good guy when he is honestly one of the most terrifying humans on this planet? Like, I unironically don't believe he is fully mortal anymore. He has done something. He has signed some pact with some deity or being and is not of this world anymore. He has seen things that we mortals could not comprehend. Those eyes, you know? They've seen things.
I need all the money. I need the soul to build the spirit bomb.
Yeah, I don't think he'd be on Goku's side somehow. He reminds me of Emperor Palpatine. He straight up reminds me of Emperor Palpatine or Darth Sidious. One of those two, like Sidious or Palpatine, one of the two. He straight up like has that Sith Lord look to his eyes, where they're like his eyes are super bloodshot, but then he has like super pale blue Nazi eyes, but the actual whites of the eyes are no longer white and just like blood red from all the fucking souls and crack cocaine he's sniffing. I wasn't saying crack cocaine. He wouldn't touch crack. He's on the pure fucking 100% Colombian. I take that back. To meet the demands placed upon them by high control group, ergo an evangelical church, many members are subsidized by the social welfare system, including the medical system, costing society even more money. Because yes, the fact of the matter is cults target the poorest people in our societies. Because they are scumbags of the highest order. And they want your daughter. Doopy doopy doopy. When undue influence is initially imposed on the minds of unsuspecting recruits by extremist cults or pseudo-religious groups, it often starts with love bombing and a promise of life in an idealistic fantasy world where they might never have to die and could live forever, achieve some elite status in a better society to come, etc. So, I mean, one of the reasons why I wanted to cover this ages ago was one, to discuss how the bite model could be used to apply to incels and incel forums, but also how it could be used to apply to the pseudo cult of Dissociated, of Chloe. It's the villain from the Mask films. Oh, I'll have to Google that in a bit too. No, I already know what you mean. It's his smile. I get you. When the villain gets... Oh my god, I totally get you already. Yes, Clary, yes. But yeah, so if we look at undue influences initially imposed on the minds of unsuspecting recruits by extremist cults or pseudo-religious groups, it often starts with love bombing. They become your best friend. They shower you with... Love bombing doesn't have to be gifts. It can be praise. It can be attention. Love bombing can take many forms, depending on who you are as an individual and who they are. A promise of life in an idealistic fantasy world. Gotta have a nice detailed inner world where you might never have to die. You could have infinitely old authors live forever in your inner world. You could live forever. Achieve some elite status in a better society to come. That more speaks of afterlife or heaven of some kind. But it can also talk of a... this is the thing. Actually, no, I take this back. This is why it's worded like this, not talking of heaven. Achieve some elite status in a better society to come can talk about cults that also, such as with Scientology, where they're indoctrinating you by, as well as the elite status of a better society in the afterlife, but there's also the better society to come as you work your way up through the cult and gain more status and privilege. Everything crashed. Oh. Well, no, Bard, this is the point. It is also stepping on religious groups too. This is why it says pseudo-religious groups, because it's basically saying all religions could be a cult. The way that this is why it's actually far smarter than that it does step on the toes. You apply the bite model to the Vatican Church, to any mainstream religion, and they are pseudo-religions because they are cults. That's the main distinction there, I'm afraid. Like, they are just cults. Once recruits have bought into all the initial promises and hype, they are incrementally introduced into a systematic method of control, one small step at a time. This is why it can often take so long to notice with pseudo-cults and pseudo-religions and these more invisible cults. Again, what I would say occurred potentially to those who befriended Chloe and such, where she formed this sort of like cult-like group around her of behaviour and such. And then once she had this group, once she had the power, that was when the methods of control began. Undue influence, which disrupts the person's authentic identity and reconstructs a new identity in the image of the group or leader. Think of all those who befriended Chloe. Bobo, if you're still here in the chat, there's something me and you have spoken about, and how she wanted you to become like them. First they became like you, and then they wanted to become you all to become like them. In the process, an individual's ability to think rationally and act independently is undermined, enslaving even the brightest, educated, and most functional people. But exactly how does it work? And that's why cults can get, anyone. You are the one who is made to feel like you are crazy, like you are irrational, like you are the one being weird and acting out for not agreeing with the rest of the cult, when the reality is they're a cult. And so they lash out and try to make you feel like you're insane. That's one of the first obvious methods of control. So let's have a look at the forms it can take. How this shit works. We'll start with behavior. It's the first method. So, behavioral control can take the form of regulating an individual's physical reality. So this means where they live. Dictate where, how, and with whom the member lives and associates or isolates. When, how, and with whom the member has sex. Control types of clothing and hairstyles. Regulate diet, food and drink, hunger, and or fasting. So if you notice any of these within groups that you yourself belong to, do speak out, or if you can think of any of these relating to groups such as what we see with sort of like Did Talk or the like the BPD, like any of these like specific groups. Also things such as you can apply this to, again, religious groups, and also the one I often tried applying this to is incels. And for some of these, we can see how obviously it's a big no. You know, they aren't like dictating where or how somebody lives, but then you could also say maybe they are, because they do talk about how you have to dress, how you have to eat, things like such as along these natures, who you have sex with, you know, who's a lower class or higher class female, you know, and so let's talk about all these sorts of things. Regulate diet, manipulation and deprivation of sleep, financial exploitation, manipulation or dependence, forcing you to exploiting you of your money, manipulating you of your money, or making you dependent on them, or they being dependent on you. Either which way, it can be bad in all forms. Restrict leisure, entertainment, vacation time. And they're literally like saying, no, you can't go on holiday then because we need to do this thing together. It gets a bit worrying. Major time spent with group indoctrination and rituals and or self-indoctrination, including the internet. Now this one, we apply that to the did groups out there. You think about that sentence for a minute and you'll go, oh my god. It's all they do on Twitter. All of Syscourse on Twitter is group indoctrination combined with rituals, forcing people to perform more, saying, read this link, do this thing. It's all self-indoctrination and group indoctrination, which was why there's so much false information we see bandied about at the moment, because it is not getting run by science, but rather by cult-like mentality and behaviours. Permission required for major decisions. Rewards and punishments used to modify behaviours, both positive and negative. Discourage individualism, encourage groupthink. Impose rigid rules and regulations. Punish disobedience by beating, torture, burning, cutting, rape, tattooing, branding. That we've not seen so much of within incel or did communities, I would hope. Threaten harm to family and friends. Force individual to rape or be raped. This is why I like the bite model, because we also start to see how lots of gang behavior, so-called gangs, really belong to cults and follow cults of personality often, with a strong gang leader running the cult, promising a life of better fortune, punishing disobedience through beatings, forcing members to rape or be raped, engaging in so many of the things we see here within the behavioral control of the bite model. We see gangs engaging within. And if we start to recognize certain gang behaviors as cult-like behavior, it could help us in tackling gang crime. Help us with getting people out of gangs. We have been very unsuccessful with getting people out of gangs in Western culture, both UK and America. This could be to do with our inability to see them for what they are. Instill dependency and obedience. Kidnapping, beating, torture, rape, separation of families is a big part of cult behavior. Imprisonment, murder. Information control. Deception, deliberately withhold information. Part B, distort information to make it more acceptable. The 1 to 3% big fucking lie. The fact that endogenic systems or whatever are now accepted. Like, there's so many medical facts that are just distorted information, messed up lies. Brain scans prove this. It's all lies. Systematically lie to the cult member. Through part of it is through the information having been withheld and distorted, and thus these continuous lies are just spread. Minimize or discourage access to non-cult sources. Read this book by Sinerson. Read this book by Onno van der Hart. Read this book by these trusted sources of mine and nobody else. Including discourage access to mainstream media such as internet, TV, radio, books, articles, newspapers, magazines, and media. You know? Critical information. Don't let people access that stuff. Don't let them read the critical sources, the opposing sources. Don't let them talk to former members. And this is why we see former members ostracized and attacked so heavily when they leave cults, because new members of the cult are not to go to the former members for information. I see this all the time with new Chloe stans. Keep members busy so they don't have time to think and investigate. Group projects, group chats, group this, group that, group the other. And then again, when you leave cult, they keep you busy with attacks. So you don't have time to do anything. Control through cell phone, texting, calls, and internet tracking. And this behavior, this is why the bite model is again good, because we see this sort of behavior within abusive relationships. And we start to see how, wow, this abusive relationship has all the traits of a cult. Wow, it's very obvious you need to get out of that. If you were in a relationship and you find yourself feeling like your partner treats you in these ways, like, whoa, you get the fuck out. Compartmentalize information into outsider versus insider doctrines. They just don't know. Ensure that information is not freely accessible. You have to get this information by signing up behind this paywall on our members-only forum. Control information at different levels and missions within group. You have the upper inner circle. You have the lower circles. I mean, this is why I joke and say, this is why I said all along we had a cult. Because I recognize certain cult behaviors within our own group, guys. That's why I constantly make sure to stamp out various behaviors as such when I see them. And when I see you guys encouraging those sort of behaviors, I always tell you off. Allow only leadership to decide who needs to know what and when. That's also why I make sure to have you guys holding me accountable for stuff too. Encourage spying on other members. Impose a buddy system to monitor and control members. Report deviant thoughts, feelings, and actions to leadership. Ensure that individual behavior is monitored by the group. Extensive use of cult-generated information and propaganda, including newsletters, magazines, journals, audio tapes, videotapes, YouTube, movies, and other media. Misquoting statements or using them out of context from non-cult sources. The misquoting statements or using them out of context. Never met any people who do that stuff ever. Unethical use of confession. Tell us what you've done. Confess. Information about sins used to disrupt and to dissolve identity boundaries. Withholding forgiveness or absolution. Being like, I can forgive you, but I don't know if things will ever be the same again. That's where you fake forgive and you actually withhold absolution. When you say to somebody you forgive them, but then like, I'll never get over this or something, that's withholding absolution. That's saying that I don't actually forgive you because you damaged me so much. That's such a horrible thing to do to somebody. Why say that you forgive somebody if you're not actually forgiving them? It's a fucking bullshit thing to do. Manipulation of memory, possible, false memories. Common within cult behaviour. Saying, no, this happened this way, this happened this way. Something we have seen Chloe try to do, rewriting history all the time. Something you see that Autumn Far person trying to do, rewriting history currently. The online dead community is very dangerous. Very fucking dangerous. One of these points soon, I am going to convince Bobo or Jess to speak out about it and explain how they have come to terms and realised it's fucked them up. Just saying. You're going to realise. Yes. Being in a cult for a long time is... The lady that manipulated Chris Chan into raping his mum wants her thread taken down because it makes her sad. Oh, could you link that in the Discord DMs for me? This thing though, I don't think cults are always necessarily completely purposeful as well. I feel like Jess basically probably accidentally started the cult many years ago. Based on the conversations we've had, I think this is my own opinion. It says nothing about you. It says nothing about her either. I'm saying I think she accidentally started a cult, and I think that was probably through the manipulation and insistence of Remy Aquarone. That is something I genuinely believe occurred based on the conversations we've had. And then but Jess never wanted to be a cult leader, so she was never a good cult leader and never made the cult flourish into anything that could be perceived as being a dangerous cult. And then Chloe came along, a far more capable cult leader. And she took what was the sort of infrastructure and groundwork, the framework, what could be a genuine cult, and started turning it into as such. That is something I can see it. Especially with the stuff I found on places like First Person Plural. You know, Remy has tried this a few times. That's why I know this to be the case nowadays. I don't question this theory of mine that much. It is a theory of mine and mine alone, but I don't question it too much because Remy has tried this so many fucking times. Tried it with Melanie Goodwin. He tried it with Sue Richardson. He will keep on trying. You've got to remember, people like that literally want the paedophile Carl Beach let out of jail. They're bad people. They'd probably want Wilfred Wong let out of jail. I wouldn't be surprised if in a few months' time we see like Remy Aquarone saying we need to let Wilfred Wong out of jail, and Valerie Simonson saying we need to protect this soldier of heaven and let him out of jail. That wouldn't surprise me. They've done this shit before. I think Jess has been super manipulated a lot of time. I mean, I've spoken to her about this stuff. Like, when she did that like TV spot, she really didn't want to. She really didn't want to do a switch or anything, but Remy and the TV producers encouraged her to, and he was there and he was like, go on, you know. He wanted them to see it. She didn't want them to see it. He wanted them to see it. And that's where I'm like, what? What kind of therapist, what kind of therapist wants a TV crew to see his patient's dissociative episode? That's a disturbing thing when you really start to break it down, when you really start to think about it. And that's why I have a lot of empathy and sympathy towards Jess, because I do feel a lot of the time she has been manipulated. I mean, she's had some like revelations in our conversations, you know. I feel like I've broken the poor girl's brain one too many times with like the whole Remy Aquarone stuff from day one and stuff. Nobody wants to find out that they're fucking the person that they thank for who they are in life, or part of that anyway, is a fucking paedophile supporter. That's fucked, man. You gotta think about that. And then that, like, months after, like, you gotta remember, that happened only a few months after finding out that her former friend Nan was a paedophile, and her friend Chloe was a paedophile defender as well. Like, that shit, when you have kids, fucks with your head, right? I feel bad there for Jess, right? Chloe I don't feel bad for, no. If my face is wobbling or the camera's wobbling slightly, it's my legs wobbling. The text isn't wobbling and it's just me wobbling. I'm afraid that's me wobbling. But then you start thinking, I followed this therapist's directions and that led me into a friendship with a paedophile and a paedophile defender. And then I find out that this man's defended a paedophile and she has a kid. That fucks with your head when that happens, when you find out that shit. I had an old friend once upon a time, I found out he was a rapist. That fucked with my head. It was a long time before I still don't trust men. I've told you the guys all that stuff. I don't trust men. I still like I told her before I made any of those videos about that stuff because I was like, I don't want this stuff to come at you via the internet. I want you to find this out properly because it's fucked shit. Some of that stuff. It's horrible. I fully empathize. So much of Remy's behaviour pushes boundaries, pushes lines, pushes moral and ethical boundaries that I will get somebody to investigate him. It will happen, and I do have the evidence necessary, I'm pretty sure, to do things. We'll see. We'll get there one day. We'll get there. This stuff all takes time, but we'll get there. We're assembling the evidence. It's all good. I just need somebody who's we've got so many people studying badass degrees in our group. Why are none of you studying a law degree? We need one of you now to start studying your law degree and become a solicitor for me. A charity solicitor who works for free. Charity cases like myself. Bro, do you know how many times I've contacted Tro? Do you know how many other people have contacted Tro about fucking Chloe and tried to get Tro right opinion to do the fucking story? I've asked him to do. I've been in his Discord. I've been like, dude, I have the most insane story with I've still got behind the scenes details that I've not given up to anyone yet because I'm saving them for a guy like that to, just be fun, be funny. I just want to get a chance to be one of the voice roles on one of his videos because I enjoy voice acting and I think it would be fun. He's also a YouTuber that I was watching back when he had 100,000, maybe 80,000, and then blew up this last 2 years where people started. But it was this last year where people wanted long form content. It's fair play. Makes good content. Good boy. Very good boy. I've literally been like, dude, you're bigger than me. There's so many of you that are bigger than me and could do stuff and raise attention. I said to Evangelina, get lazy on it. Fucking, what are you doing, fools? Oh. Get lazy to be hitting me up in the DMs saying, let's cover this. Let's get 1 million views on this shit instead of the fucking piddly 50,000 I've garnered. Which is still a fuckload for me. 1,000 subs. It's a story that would go far. Yeah, it's not like you've ever been on TV or interviewed by Lad Bible. It's not like you've ever been on some of the largest YouTube channels in the world. God, there's no way that you could possibly reach out with a really interesting story about your own community that could possibly explode and go anywhere. No chance. Fucking pain in the ass. You know that. A lot of you underestimate yourself so much and it kills me. It kills me. All of you underestimate yourself all the time. Except for you, Bard. I know you don't. You understand that you're a god. It's not like you've literally been on national telly in my country. Meanwhile, I've sent maybe upwards of not that, maybe 10 DMs to different YouTubers, to maybe 6 or 7 different YouTubers over the last year or so about this whole story and stuff. No, it's because they only see things if things get a certain amount of retweets and likes. Where if I post a comment on one of these people's pages, it gets a like. If you post a comment on one of these people's Twitter pages, it could get hundreds of likes. That's the difference. I don't know how many you have on Twitter, to be fair, but if you did it via Instagram, all your stuff on Instagram, Bobo, gets fuckloads of views when it's a proper post. You underestimate yourself, girl. You underestimate yourself. It kills me. Kills me so bad. Yeah, very, very. It's the reason why we all can get along with you fine. Because in general, even people who don't believe in DID still get that you have some mental health conditions and don't pass that much judgment, right? Like, even the people who don't believe in DID are still like, yeah, but she's still got issues, I don't know, kid's fucked. And we're like, yeah, same as all of us, whatever. So you underestimate yourself. And as you've explained to me, you only became a DidTuber many years ago because you were encouraged to create a new form of identity and become a member of a cult, effectively, right? Didn't you used to want to do, like, makeup or shit? You have whatever kind of voice you choose to have in this world. Just because you've had one kind of voice in the past doesn't mean you can't convert it to a different kind of voice. Dude, you have talent, you have potential, you could do a lot. I say this to everyone in this group, and I mean it, but I really do say this to you very, 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 very seriously as well. You've already gotten to a much larger level of popularity and attention that the average person can. Like, so have I. We're no longer in that bottom 95 percentile. We're in that, like, 96th percentile, slightly closer. You're in, like, the 97th, pretty much. Like, you can use that. Yeah, you were practically begged. You were indoctrinated into a cult, and I don't necessarily think the person who did that to you in the initial did it out of a place of malice or anything. I think they genuinely did it out of a place of thinking what was right, but they did it because they were already in a cult, not knowing that. The cult of Remy Aquaroy. I don't know. I still think you underestimate yourself is the point. So, thought control process of the bimodal. Require members to internalize the group's doctrine as the truth, adopting the group's map of reality as reality. And still black and white thinking. Us versus them. Decide between good versus evil. Organize people into us versus them. Outsiders versus insiders. No, yeah, and I know you weren't forced. I know. That's why I'm trying to, and I know that as well. It was something you did of your own volition, but it was also something that wasn't an idea prior. And that can happen with a lot of things, but it's very systematic. We see it a lot as the point with the idea in particular. People being encouraged to start a DID Twitter, people being encouraged to start a Did Talk, people encouraged to start a DidTube in order to spread the advocacy and knowledge of DID. But a lot of that knowledge being very inaccurate knowledge, the knowledge of Colin Ross, Valerie Sinerson, Onno van der Haar, you know, it's a really fussy situation, and we see so many of these abusers stepping into the scene because of that. It seems to attract like behaviors almost, which isn't surprising. You have people claiming, and people who have experienced significant degrees, but the point is, people claiming to have experienced significant degrees of trauma are going to attract significant amounts of abusers to them, right? It's horrible, but that is the fucking horrible truth. It's like how a lion targets the prey that is weak, limping. It picks the one that stands out. We with trauma, we stand out, and predators look for us. And the thing is, like, the majority of therapists everywhere I've read about this stuff, and in the ISSTD's own guidelines, which, as I keep saying, yeah, have been written mostly by bullshit artists, but we still have to look at some of them and be like, we can, for ourselves, take on what we want to think is good advice or not until there is better out there. And one of the things I do agree with on there personally is where it actually says that they don't encourage systems to create social media accounts focusing on their systems, because that draws attention and thus danger to people who have experienced significant degrees of trauma. It draws attention to them and the fact that they've experienced trauma, thus saying to people, trolls, malicious people on the internet, oh, here's somebody that I can easily get to. And it sucks that those people exist, but to be completely oblivious and just be like, I won't be affected by them, is arrogance of the utmost, you know? And like, so for people to encourage, for a professional to encourage such behavior is really, you have to wonder about them. You have to be like, why are they encouraging me to do something that with even a 10-minute think about I can be aware is kind of dangerous? As that conversation me and Jess had a few days ago broke down to in the end, that's the bottom line, isn't it? That we have to just rewrite it all from the start. All of the things have been infiltrated by bullshit and really not just like corruption, but scary levels of malevolence. And so it's time to just fucking scratch it all and start from the start. Get rid of all the existing foundations and rewrite it. Why wouldn't it feel vulnerable? And it's a good idea to challenge our vulnerabilities, but not in such manners. Change a person's name and identity. Use of loaded language and cliches, which constrict knowledge, stop critical thoughts, and reduce complexities into platitudinous buzzwords. This is something we see a lot of. I'm afraid, again, to bring it back to the idea, I'm so sorry, but we see so much of this. It's stuff like... Right. When somebody asks me what ADHD is, you know what I explain to them? I say to them, ADHD is basically, it causes a variety of symptoms, attention deficit, hyperactivity, but long and the short of it is my prefrontal cortex doesn't process serotonin and dopamine like normal people's brains do. It's almost like there's a wall in front of it. And so with a stimulant, my brain is able to process the thoughts from one area of the prefrontal cortex to another. Basically, neurons start firing correctly and sending those messages, allowing me to focus and think, which is why stimulants actually calm down people with ADHD. Okay? I can explain it medically. Whenever we are asked about what is DID, it's like, what is switching? It's like you're in a driver's seat of a car, blah, blah, blah. We've all heard that like driver's seat metaphor. But can somebody tell me what's happening in the brain in that moment? Can anybody stop using these oversimplified, platitudinous buzzwords and terms and actually explain it to me in a medical manner? What the process of dissociation is and what's occurring in the brain? Because I'm afraid it's a lot like gravity. We have lots of fancy ways of describing it. We have lots of ways of describing the effects. We have lots of ways of describing the symptoms and the cause and effects and the visible reactions. But do we have many ways of... And we have ways of measuring it too, but do we have ways of saying what it is? What is the force of magnetism? What is the force of gravity outside of the descriptions and methods of measuring it that we have? And you're left with the answer of, well, we simply don't know yet, actually. We actually don't know. Yes, Mooney, it's why you're fucking addicted to caffeine and nicotine. Because until you're on Elvance, your brain will seek out any form of stimulant it can because it will actually work and calm you down. I used to sleep better with caffeine in me before I was medicated. And literally, like, it's why pretty much everybody with unmedicated and undiagnosed ADHD at some point develops a stimulant or caffeine or alcohol addiction. But often things like MDMA and speed are things that prop up in their lives. I know, Bobo, I know, but we can't explain that this is the problem. You're still explaining a psychological phenomena. You're still explaining a theory there because we don't know the psychiatric phenomena that's occurring, unlike with bipolar, PTSD, other things where we have observed the psychiatric phenomena. It's not been as well studied as people like to claim it has. That's basically the baseline. Most mental illnesses and disorders haven't been studied much at all. The first brain scans that conclusively proved the existence of adult ADHD did only occur in like 2008 or 2009. And ADHD is one of the most common disorders in the world. So if that's the case for ADHD, why does anyone think that it's happened for a number reputable enough to prove a scientific theorem? Why does anyone think it's happened for DID? It hasn't. There have been brain scans on like 3 people, which conclusively showed nothing. It showed that the papers were written by very biased fools, that when meta-analysis was performed on those papers showed that they were bullshit. They weren't seeking to prove their point wrong. They were seeking to prove their point with what they were looking for, and thus they found what they were looking for. And that's not how you go about conducting scientific research in general. Generally, you know the point you're trying to make, and you try to disprove it beyond all doubt to show that it is true. Yeah, it's just did groupies have studied did at the moment, and so we really don't know. We actually don't know. It's horrible to say it because there are so many people out there claiming otherwise, and I hate to be that guy being like, I'm sorry, I do know better than all of you. I'm sorry, Kiwi Farms do know better, but we have read the papers as a very large group of people trying our hardest to disprove this shit. People have gone out of their way to read these papers and perform meta-analysis in a correct academic fashion, and doctors have. You know, it's not just haters on the internet. It's lots of academics have actually looked into this, but not many psychiatrists or doctors have performed the necessary studies required, because again, as I say, it didn't even happen for shit like ADHD until a decade ago. The only reason why we understand PTSD as well as we do is because of the US Marine Corps and post-Vietnam. Basically, like, we started studying PTSD in the UK at the Tavistock and Portman all the way back after World War II, but they really nailed down like PTSD research post-Vietnam, where the US were given like 1 million people with PTSD to study. I know, but there's a current. This is the problem, right? Your list, right? Your okay. Let me try and explain it again. So what you're saying is exactly what so what we have currently are psychological theories, whereas for most of the, not most, I can't say most, whereas for a lot of other disorders and illnesses out there, we have psychiatric, physiological, no longer theories, but concrete knowledges and facts as to how they occur. We still have things like EDS, Ehlers-Danlos, where we haven't nailed down the gene, we haven't nailed down whether or not there could be environmental or other factors involved other than just genetic. We haven't nailed necessarily all of this stuff down with everything, but we have with a lot of other stuff, and that's why I just get super frustrated with so much of the discourse we see online, where people try to say it as though it's like factual gospel, whereas it is nothing more than theory, and a lot of said theory has been written by people. Onno van der Hart wrote The Theory of Structural Dissociation, and as Jess herself agrees, that entire thing needs to be thrown out and rewritten by somebody else who doesn't have a history of abusing and mistreating their patients. We can't use the theory of structural dissociation anymore, I'm afraid. Just like we don't use the research as performed by Nazi scientists and doctors. We don't use the research and the science that was performed without ethics and morals. We cannot use that. Where that science is so often conducted without morals and ethics, and thus trying to prove a point, not disprove a point. It's useless science, it's useless theory, it's useless psychology, it's useless everything. It just needs forgetting, basically. That's my personal opinion, and I would love you to chat to Jess about it yourself, see if she still thinks the same. But I mean, I played the clip the other day, like, she would agree with me that it's pointless. Like, fuck these guys. Why should we listen to any of them when they were probably writing this stuff in order to help them diddle their patients, dude? That's the bottom line. Why should you believe anything written by people who are raping and performing exorcisms on patients? Like, you think they understand dissociation? The same people that perform exorcisms on people and stuff, and like get their patients drugged up on 1,000 milligrams of quetiapine and rape them and shit? Think they know anything about your trauma and dissociation other than how to give you trauma? That I imagine they understand well. The bite model. We must always start with dipping the triangular corner of the pizza into the garlic dip, and we eat our way inwards, increasing our bite with each piece until we reach the crust, at which point we leave it we leave it, unless it is stuffed crust, in which we consume it immediately. But if it is not stuffed crust, we leave it and we eat the entirety of the pizza, and then, should later on in the evening we be hungry and peckish, we have some delicious crusty breadsticks to dip into what remains of our dip and enjoy. Amen. And yeah, basically I would sort of agree with what you said there. Sorry, I didn't also read that last bit you wrote there, Bobo, of basically it's just CPTSD with amnesia. I'm so happy to hear you read that. I'm so happy to read that. This is why I've always liked you, Bobo, because you're not a crazy person. If we can all just agree that DID is associative CPTSD traits of with amnesic episodes included, and like extreme like switches in emotional stability and personality state sort of thing, then I think we can all start to agree on what this diagnosis is. Finally, which will be really nice. That I think is something even the Kiwi farmers would agree with being a legit thing. I don't think any of them would disagree that that's a thing. Saying this is why your cult will ostracize you, though, I'm afraid, because you don't speak the same as them. This is what happened to Jess as well. Jess did last year make that video on maladaptive daydreaming and basically explain how she sort of could see how her own issues could entirely come down to maladaptive daydreaming instead of DID. And it was like, that was basically her way of saying she doesn't think DID is necessarily what people keep saying it is. It could be something else. And I was like, But people really didn't like that. A lot of people ignored it and just didn't watch it. And I imagine she probably got backlash on Twitters and things I didn't see at the time. And since then she's been a bit less of that sort of knowledge and chat. I don't know. Although after that then came the chat of fusion and stuff. Which, like, if you follow her chat of fusion on from the one about her saying that she believes in the possibility of her disorder being maladaptive daydreaming, then it's like she understands basically that she's ceasing to daydream in order to escape the brutal reality of life and ceasing to use these things, then it's sort of half a chosen coping mechanism at a certain point in your life. It seemed to be that was what she was saying for herself, that it's, which would also explain why she could control her switches and stuff, because it is a chosen coping mechanism in part for her still. I think the inner world stuff is just complete maladaptive daydreaming. I agree. It's complete bullshit. And if you're straight up hearing voices, actually, and they're not just inner monologue. I think a lot of people don't understand what an inner monologue is. I think a lot of people don't understand what intrusive voices are. And I think a lot of people maladaptive daydream a lot and think those could be hearing voices. And it really pisses me off because people need to be explained. Like, I don't know. But yeah, I don't think they do, Bobo. I think they either maladaptive dream and do that stuff, like they daydream about that stuff for a few hours. And you know, the same way, like you might spend some time thinking and working out a problem, like you might think about that in a way where it's not you thinking about that problem. It's like the more competent, capable part of you working out that problem with other parts of you. I can see how people could do that in a maladaptive sense where it becomes overly real to them, but it isn't entirely a healthy thing to do, and it's not an illness. You know, it could be a trait of trauma, certainly, but yeah. Bobo, I think I know why some of your old friends might stop being friends with you, dude. Because yeah, if they legitimately see other people or see alters in the room with them, and that's actually happening, then they have schizophrenia. We have a diagnosis for that when you see hallucinations and you hear voices coming from an external locus. We have a diagnosis for that. Psychosis, psychotic episodes, and schizophrenia. You can have oral hallucinations, you can have auditory hallucinations, you can have visual hallucinations, you can have closed eye hallucinations, but when you're having hallucinations, and it is not because of a manic episode during bipolar, it's not because they're being caused by stress or dehydration or insomnia. If these hallucinations are being caused on a regular basis, then we have a name for that. It's called schizophrenia, and it sucks, and it's a really serious illness that doesn't destroy your life, that you can live with, as we know. A good friend in this chat. Like, it is something that people live with, and are still regular people. Angry people. But good people. And I totally, that's why I love the theory of maladaptive daydreaming, because I do all day. Like last night, I spent an hour and a half just staring at my Gunpla, like holding two in my hands, imagining this great fight playing out. Literally about an hour and a half. I get it's fine, whatever. Then I went to sleep. It's definitely on. Oh, r/maladaptive daydreaming. Oh yeah. No, the other thing with r/maladaptive daydreaming and r/PTSD and r/BPD is they're all the same as r/DID or r/AskDID. They're all the same fucking subreddit, bro. Not even a fucking joke. I do see my parts, like, I see the way my brain has decided to physically represent them as my brain's way of trying in real life. Makes sense. Like, you see them in your mind. Exactly, yeah, and I can see Overpeat when I think of Overpeat. I've visually seen Overpeat in real life before, helping me out and stuff, when I was on 2CB, and when I was on one of the first times I got, like, paralytically drunk in my life. Those 2 times I have interacted with the Overpeat, which is the me that talks to me and is there, like, when I'm doing something I'm going to regret, going, Pete, you're going to regret this, you shouldn't do this, that's a dumbass move, Pete. But I experience psychotic episodes because I have bipolar. I so sometimes have auditory hallucinations, and I have had some visual hallucinations throughout my life that haven't been because of drugs. Like, they suck. I'm not schizophrenic because I've only had like 6, maybe 7 episodes in my life. I don't think it's enough. I'm bipolar. I'm on antipsychotics now anyway, so I'm not going to find out. Winning! They all have OCs and shit. Yeah, because maladaptive daydreaming / shifting. You've also got shifting on TikTok now, which is the same as what people were claiming DID was a few years ago. I really need you to, like, we're just going to go have a look at it after the bite model. We're going to go have a look at the old system / plural / clusters thread on Kiwi Farms, because it's a lot kinder than any of the stuff we see on there these days, and a lot more. You'll see. It's different. It's interesting. Oh no, there's a football game going on right now. Who cares? It's called soccer. American football, mate. We're fucking American football. Hang on, is that why they won't tell me which dissociative disorder I have? Would I technically be classed as one of the DID gang? Help, god damn it. Now I'm having an existential... Lex, every single one of us in Satan's Lounge, were we to go to Dr. Mike Lloyd at the CTAD clinic or Mr. Remy Aquarone at the Pottergate, would get diagnosed with DID. I've said that before. If you have PTSD, then they would diagnose you with DID because they want to prove a point. They're not good people or good doctors as far as I'm concerned. They're too desperate to be a savior. Like, before Mike came along, Remy had a monopoly in the UK. Between the two of them, they still have a monopoly in the UK on one specific diagnosis. Think about that. Think about how fucked up that is. It's really fucked up. It's really, really fucked up. I'm not going to lie. I do have extra inner voices, and I can definitely tell the difference. Fair enough. Yeah, my inner monologue is my voice. Sometimes my brother's, generally my voice. And every now and then, my intrusive voices are those of my parents, my bullies, exes, things like that. But I don't have a buttload of voices. I have the overpeat. My brother has the same. He used to call his inner monologue Jab. I think he still does. Also, yeah, they do just hate diagnosing now, full stop. Like, if they actually diagnose you, then they have to give you treatment. So if they just give you BPD, then they can just treat you with mindfulness and Christianity. You can't see any kind of world. They say they live there and like dream of it. Because a lot of them, if you ask them, where have you been if you weren't fronting? Just freak out because your brain can't imagine just existing in a void. It's almost like maybe those parts of your personality aren't real, individual, unique alters and are just parts of your personality. Maybe it's almost like the label multiple personality disorder was better than the new label dissociative identity disorder. Or maybe identity is fine. Maybe identity is a fine word if we just keep remembering that it's just that your identity can shift slightly, but it's not that you change as a person. Whereas people love this rhetoric of treat alters like they're real people, treat alters like they're real people, treat alters like they're their own unique special human being. But they're not. Your alter that thinks it's a doctor is not a doctor. Your alter that thinks it's a pilot is not a pilot. Your alter that thinks it's a ghost is not a real ghost. Your alter that thinks it's, you know this. We've had chats about this. I'm saying this rhetorically to the world, to the void. But that thought offends people and scares people, and that's crazy. That's fucking crazy. I do have an inner world to a degree. You know what it is? It's all the stuff I've lost. I can see everything, you know when you've like gone looking for something and you've not been able to find it. All of those things that I've been unable to find, I can see where I last put them. I can see where they should be. And they're all in this one room that kind of looks a bit like my granddad's old dining room in his old house in Epsom. And I can just see them all in various corners of this room, but as though they were where they should be in real life, if that also makes sense, like in the position that I last saw them in. That's my inner world. I've never related to what Nin and some of them describe. They're dead named Kaya. Yeah, and Bobo, what you were describing right now is exactly what many of us used to be able to accept as being DID, and the whole wave of DID isn't even a real disorder exists because of people who describe it otherwise. And if people went back to describing it how you describe it, nobody would give a shit and would go back to going, oh yeah, that's probably a real thing that happens to possibly 1% of the population. I could even believe that. That is what would describe many people that I've even known. My ex Sarah, he used to just be a fucking fairy one day. A fairy, not a furry, a fairy. She was obsessed with fairies. Maybe once a month, I'd get fairy Sarah. That was the good Sarah. She'd dress up and she'd put on the fairy wings, do cute makeup. Sex would be wild. It's like a once a month thing. Different person. Yeah, I think a lot of us were like you, Clary, where we saw it, how Bobo has described it to us, and then we were like, no. Now we're being told that it means having the shit that we're being told it is by other people. No, we can't believe it. And if it's that, it became this thing of, oh, if it's Chloe, then it's not real. If it's Chloe, then the diagnosis as a whole is fake. That is the opinion of many people. And that, I think, should change, because I personally don't think it's a fake disorder. I don't. And that's an argument I've had with people a lot, but I don't. I just think what people say it is fake. And thus what it probably is being ignored and forgotten about. And that's really dangerous and scary. I think the dreaming and the way parts explain the inner world, and now the inner voices set their brain's way of rationalizing something, because the brain cannot rationalize not existing when different parts are inside. Yes. These are all logical ways to rationalize. They're all theories. They're all ideas. But people start saying, no, it's real. It's real. And these alters are real. And it's like, but again, what about these, like, I think it was just like one of her alters is a doctor or something, or a teacher, and it's like, that's a daydream. They are those characters in order to protect her and make her stronger in her interactions when she's been out there and Jess couldn't handle it, and suddenly it was somebody else who could handle it. Because in their head, they're a doctor. They're not actually a fucking doctor or a teacher or whatever they thought they were, you know? It's just a way to protect and cope. So not normal to have voices other than your own as inner monologue. No, perfectly normal still. That is still normal, Lex. Okay, this thing. When I start thinking about my inner monologue can take any shape and form because I'm very good at recalling people's voices in my head. And it can shift into many shapes and forms. But it always shapes into those forms with my accent. Yeah, this thing, they still have my accent. We were discussing this the other day, how our inner monologues, even when I, like, if I think of your voice, for example, Lex, in my head, I don't think of exactly your voice. I think of me doing an impersonation of your voice, if that makes sense. It's really awkward how it works in my head, to be honest. Yeah, guys, I've said this a million times. Reason why I was interested in DID is one of my old best friends is the person you've spoken to, categorically what Bobo would describe. He's the same as you, Bobo. That's what we would call DID. He is. So was my ex Sarah, and again, I mean, she had literally like the same diagnosis as you do, like word for word, like. So there's always been a reason why I've given a shit about this and looked into it so much and researched the fuck out of it so much, because I knew about this shit. I mean, I am still, and I still need to ask Andy about this. I'm still 99% sure me and him, like, probably were following Jess's Tumblr back in the day when we were at uni, because we were like finding out about this stuff back in 2011, and we all had Tumblrs back then. So can't stand the whole every part is their own complete individual. Like, no, there are not a lot of individuals living inside my body. There are different aspects of the whole that, due to trauma, have been separated by amnesia. They were the same person that just got screwed up mentally by trauma. What a wonderfully honest and refreshing way of reading that. Why so many people like myself be pissed off seeing people describe it as a defense mechanism, as a protective coping mechanism, but it's like, no, you got fucked up by trauma. Let's stop trying to teach people that trauma gives people special abilities, because it really doesn't. Hypervigilance isn't a special ability. Hypervigilance sucks. It's all trauma. It all sucks. There's no good part to trauma. I've been saying for years that Texas isn't a real vampire, but yes, she believes that they're delusions. And you can't keep letting her believe it. But it's what she's done so she can be as unrelated as possible to your family. Because as a little kid, you being a vampire from America was probably the polar opposite. I get it. That suddenly all makes sense. Again, I used to roleplay that I was a vampire. So then imagine you've thrown the fucking trauma or shit. Like, I got, like I say, those mild, typical growing up in England traumas and abuses. Never ever claimed anything else from my parents, you know. And there's a reason why I still love them and get along with them very well. I get annoyed at them too, but I do love them very much. It's very different, and I understand that to a lot of you. Yeah. Like, it's taken us all a long time to get this way. And again, Bobo, you've been a huge part of that for myself anyway, as well. And I think a lot of us here being like, oh, well, it's not shit if one of them's at least not shit with us. My therapist was upfront about one of my parts that thought of themselves a certain way. They aren't actually what they think they are. It's just the brain trying to make sense of something. Yeah, and it's literally a delusion. And a delusion is a psychosis, a psychotic delusion. The same as how I genuinely thought for 7 years of my life I was going to blink and wake up dead or dying. I wasn't, or I was going to enter the void. Like, I was literally waiting for it to happen at any fucking moment, because I knew it to be real. That was a psychotic delusion. And I needed help getting out of that, not having that reinforced, you know? If people around me had been reinforcing that delusion, well, they wouldn't be my friends. And the ones that did do that shit, well, they've apologized for it, and that's why they're still my friends. Like, you shouldn't encourage people's delusions. That's why I've always said I will never, ever address your alters by their alter names. I'll always just call you guys by what I know you as. There are still some alters that come into the chat that have a bit of difficulty with that stuff, I think. A few systems and such have difficulty with that, but I'm never ever, like, I wouldn't, if somebody with schizophrenia was seeing something on the ceiling and telling me to interact with it, I wouldn't interact with it. I'd be very calm and kind with them, and I'd be like, I'm really sorry. Like, I understand that you can see that there, but I can't, and I don't wish to interact with it. I'm sorry. You know? And I'd be like, but it's okay as well. That's fine. Like, I get it. I think we know we can both think about what's happening here, and then you move on from it. And it's like, okay, that will make it easier for them to then ignore or get through, is what I've read anyway. And this is why I want to have a chat soon about this properly, so I can learn better about this, so I can know the exact right thing to do in said situation should it ever occur to me in my own life. But the point is not to pander to the delusion, because pandering to delusion literally leads to death. Again, with my delusions were encouraging me to kill myself. Had somebody pandered to my delusions, kept encouraging me that the world wasn't real, it would have been very, very easy for me to kill myself. Just making it easier and easier every day. I was using self-harm in order to stay grounded. Self-harm became my grounding technique, because the only way I thought that the world was real was when I was in pain, severe amounts of pain. That ain't good, That's what psychotic delusions lead to. And we shouldn't, thus we don't engage with them, when we don't encourage them, when we try to help people get out of them. And that is not what I see on Discourse, DidTube. I see a lot of people encouraging the worst aspects and behaviours, which is cult-like behaviour. It avoids the true knowledge, and it instead spreads and facilitates and elaborates and expands upon a massive lie in order to indoctrinate people into the cult. And also, I think the final trap of the cult is how, when people are so deep into it and have made so much content and have put themselves out there in such a way, when they do that, they potentially then feel too much shame. I know that could have happened with you, Bobo, as well. Where it's hard to speak out against this stuff because you feel like you can't. There's shame or stigma, or people will attack me for it. It's such a phenomenal web, really, what's occurred in recent years, and how it all ties back into SRA is just fascinating. That's the point, is that the DID that people like yourself claim to experience doesn't allow for the existence of SRA. Doesn't allow for the existence of mind control alters. And that's no good for people with malevolent goals. This current stuff I see on Twitter about, and even Jess again expanding into it, being saying that she's scared of losing her alters and stuff, and it's like, what are you doing? Let's not do that. Here's the thing, basically, it was fine for us to bully furries. Everyone knew furries, it's a load of shit, and everyone was fine bullying them. You can't bully people with mental health issues, and furries couldn't claim to have a mental health issue. You get it? You get it? So where did we get to? Change person's name and identity and thought control. Use of loaded language, and cliches. Encourage only good and proper thoughts. Don't think about the bad sides of DID, only talk about the good sides. Hypnotic techniques are used to alter mental states, undermine critical thinking, and even to age regress the member. Hypnotic techniques, Chloe used to talk about self-hypnosis and doing it all the time, are used to alter mental states, undermine critical thinking, and even to age regress the member. Memories are manipulated, and false memories are created. The false memories as created by the likes of Valerie Sinerson and Remy Aquarone, the true leaders of the cult that I wish to take down. I've said that this is something me and Holly used to talk about so often, is that the cult is the ISSTD. The cult leaders have spread all around the world into different branches. The cult is DID in its current form. The main cult leaders are people such as Remy Aquarone, Colin Ross, anyone attempting to establish a clinic that practices and treats only trauma and DID. They are establishing themselves as cult leaders effectively, okay? And then they use, every cult has within its branch, every cult will have branches. So normally a cult has a all-round cult leader, but this time the all-round cult leader is the philosophy, okay? And then the cult branches themselves have division leaders, and the division leaders in this instance could be seen mostly as being accidental, such as with Jess. I don't think she ever wanted to be a division leader of a cult, of a branch of a cult. but you also have more purposeful ones, such as Chloe, who I think saw an opening to become a successful cult leader in something within the infrastructure, and as I say, in the framework had already been laid for her, because there is this desire for a larger it's almost like an open source cult, right? Anyone can add to it, anyone can develop within this cult, as long as it stays true to the overall narrative of the cult. As long as you stay true to the narrative, the overall message, you can add basically whatever you like to it. And hopefully your addition will enable you to become a cult leader, a division leader of your own miniature pseudo cult within the said overall larger cult, which then allows for this sort of flow of traffic from cult leader to cult leader to cult leader, because none of them are true cult leaders. They're pseudo cult leaders within a larger cult that is encouraging this flow of traffic between all of its different branches. And the spread of these whispers, this cross-pollination of misinformation is what we are then on the receiving end of. I haven't got used to it in all caps. Easier for dyslexia. It's what makes mental health communities easy prey for fakes and malingerers, and people wanting to take advantages of others, but aren't willing to call out people who are obviously wrong, because, oh no, we can't discriminate against the mentally ill even when they're wrong. Yeah, it's such a powerful field for the manipulative to enter. As I say, it's because this framework, this infrastructure was established all the way back in the 70s during the original Satanic Panic, and it's remained effectively unchanged, and they're open for anyone willing to do a bit of background research in how to fake SRA DID. That's what we're going to start calling it. We'll call it SRA DID. Like, there is a field, there is the knowledge, there is the sort of educational resources out there in order to teach you how to have a fake disorder and use that to then be pushed and encouraged. People within the community will then push and encourage you and give you the accesses, the resources, the links to grow, to bloom, and to blossom. It's amazing. It's actually really amazing when you start thinking about it in this light. And it's accident. Like, I'm not even saying it's been done purposefully. As I say, like, so much of it is really sort of like accidental and almost natural. That's why I love about the bite model, how it shows these aspects of life where we can almost fall into naturally forming cults. But the bottom line is, even though they're naturally forming, it doesn't mean that they're not fucking dangerous, manipulative, and bad for us as a whole and as a society. People never want to see real DID online because it doesn't involve satanic rituals. It doesn't involve men in robes. It involves little kids getting beaten and raped and living really difficult lives with lots of comorbid situations and problems. Why would anyone want to see that? Why would anyone want to watch that? I don't. None of us do. And so yes, it will never be popular or famous or cool. I think so much mental health advocacy does us nothing but harm. People learned about bipolar thanks to the advocacy of people like Stephen Fry, and all that it did is it made people think bipolar was this like cool, edgy, super genius disorder that meant you don't actually have an illness. It just means that sometimes you're a bit hyper and you just have a high IQ. And it's like, I mean, the high IQ part's true, yeah, sure. But you know, like, there's the like ADHD awareness in the 90s just made people think that fucking hyper children meant ADHD, and you got over it once you entered puberty. Like, none of the time has there been public awareness about mental illness or disorder has it done anyone with the disorder any good. Any good. Instead, spend time, effort focusing on teaching people with the disorders how to protect themselves from the influences of the public and those who would wish to harm them. Teaching thought-stopping techniques. Oh my god. How much of this relates to DID in this bit, in the thought section of the bite model? which shut down reality testing by stopping negative thoughts and allowing only positive thoughts, including denial, rationalization, justification, wishful thinking, chanting, meditating, praying, speaking in tongues, singing or humming, rejection of rational analysis, critical thinking, constructive criticism, forbid critical questions about leader, doctrine, or policy, labeling alternative belief systems as illegitimate, evil, or not useful. Endogenics are illegitimate. Endogenics are fake. Now endogenics aren't, and if you say otherwise, you're evil or illegitimate. And still new map of reality. Tell people that north is south and south is north. How many fingers am I holding up? How many fingers am I holding up? 3. That's how many. Tell me you see 3 fingers. That's 3. If you count any more than 3, I'm afraid you're the fucking crazy one. If you see any more than 3 there, I have words for you, buddy. If you see any more than 3, you're dead. And then emotional control. Here in emotional control, we'll go, oh yeah. So the abusive tactics of abusers, the abusive tactics of our parents, of our exes, the abusive tactics of friends that we've gotten rid of, we can start to see how this stuff can be used in a cult-like setting or a social setting, in a governmental setting, in order to stop us thinking. Because that's the other thing. That's the final place I want you to apply the bout model to. Like, let's apply this bout model to more than... So we've applied it to, friendship groups, loved ones. We've applied it to the DID community. We can apply this so easily to various religious organizations, be those smaller, such as the Mormons, which aren't even that small, Jehovah's Witnesses, or we can apply this to larger groups, such as, Baptists, evangelicals, even Catholics, even mainstream Islam. This could be applied to Buddhism. So Buddhism is a fucking cult, mate. Mindfulness is pure. Like, do you know when cults became like a huge issue in America, right? When Eastern traditions of Buddhism, mindfulness, and yoga came over. Because mindfulness basically teaches you how to brainwash someone and indoctrinate them into a cult. Now, who teaches us mindfulness on a daily basis in the real world? Our employers. They say to us, oh, you've got an issue, you're stressed at work, do some mindfulness, don't shout at your boss. Mindfulness is a fucking disease upon this planet. I cannot exaggerate it enough. Mindfulness is how to indoctrinate people into a cult and get them to stop thinking for themselves about the real source of their problems, and to instead start thinking about nothing other than what they are told to think about. That's the truth of mindfulness. It's literally, the people I know that practice mindfulness are also the same people, my brother and sister-in-law, who believe the most conspiracy theories, believe the stupidest shit about the vaccines, Whereas people who don't practice mindfulness do tend to be more stressed, do tend to be more pissed off and upset by life, do tend to see more injustices in this world, because they're not blind and shut off anymore. You know who else teaches mindfulness other than your employer? The literal government, by making it the NHS's only form of mental health care anymore. Literal fucking government. The mindfulness police are trying to fuck us all, bro. They are it's why mindfulness won't work for you, because it's religion and it's bullshit. It's one of the 3 main core tenets of Buddhism, and it will never fucking work for anyone that isn't actually a Buddhist or a Christian. I know real DBT doesn't use mindfulness or radical acceptance. Radical acceptance and mindfulness are not parts of DBT. I can safely, I've studied DBT a lot, and I can safely say I'm better at it than most people who practice it and teach it, as I think most of you in this chat can probably agree. I'd say I'm a bit of a DBT master when you break down what it means, dialectical behavioural therapy. Something I greatly believe in, changing our awful inner monologues, those awful things that we grew up hearing and then we tell ourselves at night, and as we think that hold us back, those awful, awful, awful intrusive thoughts and things that our inner monologue throws at us can be shifted and changed into positive, uplifting thoughts through the power of dialectical behavioural therapy. And it's something that we can do to ourselves, but it's something best done in a group setting with groups of people who are unconsciously doing it to each other. It's best done by finding a bunch of people who may have issues with themselves, but overall in life are positive and optimistic. And you continuously lift each other up and you tell each other how to think better. And that is true dialectical behavioural therapy. And it's one of the true key secrets of good group therapy. DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, what it is like, you're like, oh, today's been a shit day. And you're like, has it been a shit day? Or, there were parts of this day that weren't that great, but there were parts that were okay. It was a day. That's DBT, where you changed yourself from saying it was a shit day to it was a day. And tomorrow could be better. That's DBT. Just saying things like that to yourself, literally. And it really does help. But it won't fix all your problems either. It just helps. It just helps. It just is a good thing to do. Mentalization-based therapy, yes. Yeah, it is mindfulness, that, yeah. It's just the NHS's way of relabeling mindfulness. Because people are realizing that mindfulness is Buddhism. Mindfulness, I think, does work for somebody like yourself, Bard. You are somebody who... So some people innately practice mindfulness themselves, and for those people, I think it works. Where they already naturally, intrinsically, intuitively do lots of stuff that is part of the core tenets of mindfulness. I think learning more about mindfulness can be useful, because it can help you see what else you can do in your life to access that inner calm and peace. And with somebody like you, you wouldn't end up thinking, oh, I'm not going to get pissed off at my boss because of this. No, you're still going to direct your anger where it deserves to be directed. I know you. But it's something that's pushed heavily in a lot of workplaces and sort of mental health care because it's cheap. It doesn't do shit for a lot of people. It's pushed on so many people with mental health issues here in the UK who just need medication, like me. Mindfulness has been studied and shown to literally not do anything for people with ADHD. It can't until they are medicated. We can't do it without medication. Yeah. I would also say, Bud, that you, like me, do a lot of DBT within the group yourself and on yourself a lot of the time, and so do you, Clary. Yeah. And it's why I've been loving this group, because there's a few of us in here who sort of intrinsically practice it, a few of us who know a bit about it and do it, and a few of us who, like I say, just sort of intuitively do it, and it creates a group setting of continuous being like, no, you're not a shit person. You may have made a mistake, but that doesn't mean you're a shit person, and you can forgive yourself for a mistake. That's DBT. It's going, oh, I'm a fucking idiot, to sometimes I'm an idiot and I say things bad, but that's just to let you guys know I can be an idiot. Doesn't think badly of myself either, though. Yeah, therapy, mindfulness, most therapy's bullshit anyway. It just is. It's therapy because it's based upon psychology. It exists based upon theorems, and it will work for some and it won't work for others because it's therapy. That's the point. It's never going to be science or medicine. The thing is, Bart, basically, you meditate as the mindfulness is pointless, as I keep saying. You meditate. You are mindful. You meditate, and you are positive. You kind of already I don't know if you've studied Buddhism at some point, but you practice Buddhism without the spiritual elements, it would seem, which I think is quite healthy in a lot of ways, to be honest. I was told to go for a group CBT, cognitive behavior, stress and anxiety, as a prerequisite for ADHD referral. What? What's that going to do? Oh my god. Brilliant. Oh, you gifted a sub. I don't know if I did see. Who did you give a sub to? To We Are Omega. I did see that. I think I said thank you and was celebrating that earlier. Maybe I didn't because I was too distracted. At the same time, you in America, it would seem far more open about therapy and far more people have access to therapists and such in America, but whether or not that's because any of them are any good. All of ours is shit too. It's just shit. Get a private psychiatrist, get a good group of friends. That's what I'm realising is the best therapy. You guys have said it to me before, and I have said it to you before because I mean it. I've received much better therapy, compassion, and care and support from what were initially a bunch of strangers on the internet that I now consider friends. It's incredible. It makes you really double think a lot of the paid therapy, and then it's this like, what are they trying to do? What are they actually trying to do? So, emotional control aspects of the bite model. Cults will manipulate and narrow the range of feelings. Some emotions and or needs are deemed as evil, wrong, or selfish. You're acting this behavior. You're just acting so selfishly. You don't care about the group. You don't care about the group. You're acting so selfishly, revealing our group secrets to the world. You're so selfish. What you're doing is wrong. You shouldn't have revealed to people that what we were doing was wrong. You should have kept that secret for us. You're the bad person because you revealed to innocent people that we were doing something bad. So you're the bad one now. Teach emotion-stopping techniques to block feelings of homesickness, anger, doubt. This is why mindfulness is useful for cults, because it's an emotion-stopping technique. Make the person, and again, businesses do this. They try to stop you feeling homesick, anger, doubt through techniques such as mindfulness. Make the person feel that problems are always their own fault. It's your fault your work is late, not your boss's fault for setting unrealistic deadlines. It's your fault that people are angry at us right now. It's your fault that I'm receiving backlash because you betrayed us. You did a good thing, but it's your fault. You whistleblower. You're like, literally, it's like, this is why I apply this to governments too, because we look at somebody like Edward Snowden, whistleblower, who's through his actions have helped raise awareness and attention to numerous crimes of the American government. He shouldn't have done that. He's a bad guy and he's going to jail for it. Clary, how many internet groups have you had? First group of internet friends I've ever had, personally. I'm hurt. Thought we were all losing our internet friendship V card together. I'm joking. Promote feelings of guilt or unworthiness, such as identity guilt. You are not living up to your potential. I think that's something I can be guilty of, and I don't mean to do that. If any of you ever feel that from me, I don't ever mean to make you feel like you aren't living up to your potential. What I more mean is when I say things like you don't see your potential or see how much you're worth or see how incredible you are sometimes, is I just truly think you guys are amazing. And I think whatever you do in life is living up to your own potential. Whatever you see fit is you living up to your own potential. I hate that thing if you aren't living up to your own potential. I just think people don't see their own potential. Not that they don't live up to it. Yeah, and that's not what they want you to do at work and in cults, bud, is they don't want you to process the feeling, because if you process the feeling, you might understand where the feeling comes from. They want you to stamp the feeling out. You can't make me think that. You literally can't make me think that. Dangerous, dangerous game. You see, now I can't look. Now I've got that problem where if I look right at my screen with the chat box, the second I see your name, I'm going to laugh. I'm just going to have to ignore the chat for a bit now and just carry on. Because if I look at the chat box and I see your name, I'm going to start laughing. Because I can't think about that. I can't think about it. Identity guilt. Feelings of unworthiness, guilt. Identity guilt. You're not living up to your potential. Your family is deficient. Your family abused you. Your family is satanic pedophiles. Your past is suspect. You don't remember the abuse that took place. You don't remember the satanic ritual abuse. Your affiliations are unwise. Those friends of yours, they're bad for you. You know, they're bad for you, those friends. Very bad for you. Don't know who you've been talking to lately or who you've been hanging out with, but can't trust them. Your thoughts, feelings, actions are irrelevant or selfish. I know you think you were doing what was right for people, but you were just acting selfishly. You're irrelevant. Social guilt. Ergo, Social guilt would be like, I don't know, social guilt would be like one of the members of the cult going on their Twitter to complain about how somebody had hurt them, and then getting all these responses of, oh, you poor thing, and stuff, just in order to make one member of the group that's being ostracized feel pain. I really want to find the people. I really want to find the people pushing this perverse mindfulness sort of thing and fix their bad understanding of how to properly practice self-awareness. What did I miss? I call that the frog. Feel that, bud. I feel that. I'm not that sleepy though, and that's why I like getting angry about this stuff and ranting about it. Historical guilt. And still fear, such as fear of thinking independently, the outside world, enemies. I wonder if anyone ever described me as being an enemy or attacking. Why does somebody keep attacking us? They're an enemy of ours. They're not a friend of ours. They're an enemy of ours. Why do they keep attacking us? Why won't you defend us against them? Outside world. Losing one's salvation. Leaving or being shunned by the group. Others' disapproval. Extremes of emotional highs and lows. Love bombing and praise one moment, and then declaring you were a horrible sinner who has hurt them the next. Ritualistic and sometimes public confession of sins. Phobia, indoctrination, inculcating irrational fears about leaving the group or questioning the leader's authority. No happiness or fulfillment possible outside of the group. Terrible consequences if you leave. Hell, demon possession, incurable diseases, accidents, suicide, insanity, 10,000 reincarnations, etc. Shunning of those who leave, thus instilling the fear of being rejected by friends and family. Never a legitimate reason to leave. Those who leave are weak, undisciplined, unspiritual, worldly, brainwashed by family or counsellor, or seduced by sex and money, or rock and roll. Threats of harm to seduced by money, sex, or rock and roll. Threats of harm to ex-member and family. Things to think about and look out for. Stop, brain can't take. It took me too long to realise that sound was upsetting. I need to start looking into, like, the stuff I know about Darkside Phil makes me so annoyed, and the stuff you've told me about him makes me so further annoyed, like, and at some point, I know, because I've been promising you for well over a year now, I'll make a video about him. I've been dude, bud, hold me to account. I've been promising you a video on Darkside Phil since June 2020. Or July 2020-ish. I've let you down, bro. Yeah, Mooney, because you're autistic. You have no ability to tell what you're feeling half the time. Because autism. So I'll be getting more and more anxious or upset, and it's because a specific sound or light or smell or something dumb. That's called sensory overload. Done. Diagnosed. Autism. Neurotypicals don't experience sensory overload. Done. Autism. That's why I hate the term meltdown, because most people don't have meltdowns. They actually have overloads. Normally a meltdown is caused actually because you've been overloaded, and meltdown is offensive, whereas it's like, oh man, my brain's overloaded. People understand that really quickly, like what that means. If you say that to anyone can kind of understand what that means. It's like, I'm overwhelmed, you know. But overloaded actually specifically, refers to the sensory nature of it. You know, overwhelmed, you get overwhelmed by feelings, emotions, and you can get overwhelmed by being overloaded sensory. Neurotypicals do experience sensory overloads. Do they? You're not neurotypical. Shut the fuck up. How would you know? How many neurotypicals do you even know? Do neurotypicals even exist, really? Or are they all just people masking in denial? Wouldn't that be great? I wish. Clary, you're not fucking neurotypical. Fuck off. You're the most autistic person I've met. I love you. You're amazing. You are super autistic. And we all know that. And we've told you that, like, at least once a day for a month now. Hoss. Who is Hoss? Do I need to, like, ban Hoss? Because they keep following me. What is Hoss? Bud, can you check out who this fucking Hoss person is for me, dude? It's fucking pissing me off. I'm not going to talk. I don't know who they are. Just keep subscribing, following. It's a bit weird. Is this like a new bot that's affecting Twitch then or something? It's all over. Fair enough. Thank you. Okay. I have sensory overload and I'm neurotypical, says the least neurotypical person in the chat. Guys, if you have ADHD, you're also not neurotypical. Self-diagnosis. Right, guys, the reason why I constantly say self-diagnosis is bad, self-diagnosis is dangerous, and you shouldn't self-diagnose, is because the majority of the people that that message goes out to, that message is meant to reach, is children. Okay? Because 99% of that time I've said that sort of message has been in regards to talking about videos that I know Chloe Stans will watch. And it's because I cannot stand this rhetoric amongst children trying to diagnose themselves when they are just going through puberty. And they actually don't know at that age. I know I didn't. I want them to just focus on being children and stop trying to do all this shit that adults are meant to deal with, you know? Whereas, self-diagnosis is bad, right? Yeah, but also, I may as well finish the point. But also, I feel like for us adults who've been living with issues and symptoms and problems their entire life, we can often, with a bit of true research, know. You know? We can know. Bobo, you're autistic as fuck and you definitely have ADHD probably too. I would love to know what you'd be like on Elvance. I know you're already on a few meds, but I think some of them are no good for you and would probably be replaced by being on cannabis and Elvance. Because that's the other thing I have noticed with those of you, such as yourself, who have diagnosis such as yourself and aren't utter whack jobs, is that, again, as I've said, the similarities to my ex Holly and the fact that she had ADHD, Elvance helped her the fuck. Like, so many of you have so many ADHD-like symptoms. It's very interesting, and many people don't fully understand what ADHD is. So it is fair. Like, people talk about stigma and stuff. Like, ADHD is so stigmatized because you see a hyper kid and you're like, they have ADHD. Now they probably just had too much sugar, and then like. So it's stigmatized and it's really misunderstood. People don't understand how the majority with adults with ADHD will experience intense suicidal ideation. I think like 5% to 10%, something along those lines. I'm not going to cite specific statistics to raise that, but there are a certain percentage, and it's shockingly high, of men and women who go undiagnosed with ADHD into adulthood who attempt or commit suicide. There's a lot of stuff about ADHD that is really misunderstood. Same with OCD. How OCD, people think OCD is, we've discussed this a lot, just being neat and tidy, when the reality is the thing that OCD is most closely diagnostically and neurologically and psychiatrically linked to would be schizophrenia. OCD and schizophrenia share so much in common with each other. Like, yeah, every person loves to bandy OCD about like it's a nothing. It's so interesting how little we really actually understand about this stuff, and that's why doctors will spend their entire life focusing in on one thing. My psychiatrist, who is one of the psychiatrists that was working on the papers and got ADHD recognised as an adult diagnosis, Dr. Sally Cubbins, treats adult ADHD, and that's it. That's it. That's all she works with is adults with ADHD. Done. There is that level of specialism. You know? I can't self-diagnose when I already think I'm faking the diagnosis I have. Pretty sure I'm autistic, but my sleep patterns and hyperfocusing and jumping from body. Well, Bobo, you're autistic and ADHD, same as most people with autism, you tend not. Oh, sorry, most people with ADHD, you tend not to have ADHD by itself. You tend to have ADHD with something else, normally autism, and then that combo of ADHD and autism inevitably leads to you growing up with, as an adult, having CPTSD. Inevitably, due to the thing that we have discussed so often of the average child with ADHD being berated, told off, and made to feel less than or worthless on average 20,000 times a year growing up. 20,000 times more than an average child a year growing up. And that's from something like a few thousand times to 20,000 times in a year. It's insane. It's like the average child will get like 5,000 admonishments a year, and a child with ADHD will receive 25,000 admonishments a year growing up. That leaves you with CPTSD, constantly feeling unsafe, constantly feeling judged, constantly feeling like you can't do things right, constantly feeling different, not being able to settle down and stick down with things. I've only been able to settle down and stick to things since being on Elvans, and I've now maintained YouTube and things like this, Twitch, really well. You don't have real OCD, you have OCD-like symptoms from your autism and also from ADHD. ADHD comes with a lot of OCD-like traits, but not the actual severity required for OCD. The severity of OCD is that, you know, if I don't flip the light switch 6 times, my family will be murdered by the demons. You know, that is fucking OCD. Like, no. I don't think any of you fake the experiences or symptoms that you describe. I just don't think any of you have had an opportunity to talk to a good, really, I mean, maybe you've talked to good professionals, but not to the right professional at any point in your life. And that sucks. You won't know until you're on medication, and then you'll get what I get. You think you experience imposter syndrome? Nah, you don't fucking know. You don't even fucking know till you hit my level, where 2 years on the medication I'm on, and I try and think back to my old memories, and they aren't my memories, they are somebody else's memories, and I feel like my entire life has been a lie, and I am a true imposter, living like my memories can't be my memories, because this person that I am now could not do those things, and I don't know who that person was. It's just unmedicated Pete. So yeah, when the traits reach a level of distress to the individual, of distracting from, like, making life unlivable, basically, but like, it's severe. It's severe. It generally comes along with psychotic episodes, with like the like defining thing of just somebody being a bit of a neat freak compared to having OCD is often the sort of psychotic elements. That being what you describe as distress, but like it's like psychotic level of distress, same as like where you can have like I've discussed earlier, hallucinations from lack of sleep or high levels of stress. With extreme OCD, it's the same. Yeah, if it's just I need to do it, I need to do it. If it's just I need to do it, that's like ADHD/autism. I understand that. Like sometimes I like stopping my leg from shaking or things like that. I need to do it, even though I don't. There are things like that are compulsions. Compulsions being very different to obsessions. A compulsion that mildly distresses you or upsets you is one thing. When you can't fulfill it, you know, it's irritating as fuck not having the lights the right way around, maybe, sure, but it's not gonna make you literally think your family will die. Obsessive compulsive personality disorder, yeah. Exactly, where the OCPD is exactly where it's more about what you're describing there, Bobo. Like, there is the distress, there is the obsessive need, the compulsive behaviors, the obsessively compulsive actions and behaviors. But I imagine what you're saying there, Clary, is if you don't perform those compulsive behaviours, you're not then going to spend the next week actually convinced everyone in your life is going to die or something. You have people with OCD, or is it OCPD possibly, who will literally go to the police and turn themselves into the police on a weekly basis saying, I've murdered someone, I've definitely murdered somebody, because they are convinced. They know that it was that OCPD, obsessive compulsive personality disorder. Is that one right? Surely, no. I can't. You don't have the brain telling you there are consequences. No, you see, with OCPD, it's literally to the point where people are going to the police each week, isn't it? And saying, like, I've killed my family. Like, no, you haven't. No, I've killed my family. No, you haven't. And they have to have that proved to them. They have a delusion or a belief that has to be obsessively disproved and cannot be rid of. This is the thing, people don't understand severity. From what I understand, for it to be that diagnosis, it actually needs to be that severity. It can't be less severe than that. It really needs to be at the severity where it's destroying your life for it to be deemed OCPD. And if it's not causing you to behave in extreme ways that could be considered delusional or irrational, then it can't be an OCPD, and if they're not like harming to your life as such. From what I believed. Hey Lex, you gave me one of them a couple of weeks ago. It's about time. I did it. So well, we'll have a good chat about all this stuff maybe tomorrow or something. It'll be interesting. I'm there for that. Yeah, this is why I'm so. What's it like? I don't know. Yeah, it's more about the individual symptoms and how to help alleviate the individual symptoms and experience, isn't it? Obsessive compulsive personality disorder is a mental condition in which a person is preoccupied with rules and orderliness. Is OCPD a good thing? Someone with OCPD can be dependable, hardworking, and conscientious. Usually, people with full-blown OCPD present great challenges to a relationship. What is this writing here? Oh my god. Perfectionism, neatness. You feel righteous, indignant, and angry. You experience social isolation and anxiety from lack of other people's inability to maintain standards. Oh, my father, I see. My father is OCPD. Just don't say you're POCD. That's the one you don't want to be. Don't accidentally ever type and say you're POCD. Okay? Never type POCD accidentally. No, it's not bad to want a diagnosis. You can receive fucking Mooney. I had no access to any form of help until I got my diagnosis. That's why I'm always saying to people, yes, you need to go out there and seek specific diagnoses, certainly. But all that matters is getting a diagnosis that gains you access. If there are, like with ADHD, yes, you need your ADHD diagnosis. You'll never get access to Elvans without it. With something like bipolar, yes, you need your bipolar diagnosis because you'll never get access to the medications required for it without it. But, like, as I say, like, my autism isn't a recent formal diagnosis. It's a suggestion of Asperger's from 10 years ago that every GP psychiatrist I've spoken to has been like, well, yeah, you have autism. But you literally have to just get the NHS to do a fucking pain in the ass 4-year wait process to get that actually put on your paperwork or whatever, on your record. So am I going to say I'm not autistic because of that? No. I know I've got autism. I know I'm autistic. I don't have to question it. It's not self-diagnosis. Something that's been explained to me by a number of doctors and psychiatrists. Just because they haven't stamped the paperwork doesn't make a fucking difference to me. It only makes a difference if there were meds or therapies that would be restricted to me because of it. Okay, so Elvance, you're not getting that without your ADHD diagnosis. You fucking do something about that. Certainly, were my autistic traits and the aspects of them that affected my life worse or more severe in a certain way, did I have less like bodily awareness or things like that, then yeah, I would seek diagnosis, obviously, because then that would be the thing affecting me in that way. But things like your autism don't affect you guys necessarily. Don't affect most of us negatively in any shape, way, or form. Being neurodivergent isn't the thing that makes our lives difficult. That's basically what I've come to understand. Diagnosis can also help you understand which symptoms came from where, but that for me honestly wasn't like. So Dr. Sally, she knew I was either ADHD or bipolar. She thought I could be both. She had no way of knowing if I was ADHD for certain until we stabilised my traits that were more like that of bipolar. Once I'd been stabilised on quetiapine for 6 months, she was like, right. And I described what issues I was still having in my life. At that point, it was really obvious. Yes, I also had ADHD. I was like, cool, now we can treat this with this as well. Great. 2 years down the line, I was like, I'm still experiencing flashbacks and nightmares and still having issues with sleep and these other things occurring. And it's like, oh, it's PTSD. So sometimes the process of diagnosis, medication and isolation can help with understanding the full picture. That can be a very useful thing. You can target the symptom and target the problem more easily. So OCD sufferers perform ritualistic behaviours, and those persons with OCPD tend to be perfectionistic in many areas. So basically, when people say, oh, I'm so OCD, what they actually mean is, I'm so OCPD. And when people say that's hilarious, basically. But they still shouldn't say that, because OCPD it's where you are a neat freak tidiness to the point where it's actually damaging your social interactions. It's damaging your way of life. It makes life harder. People might look at you and be like, oh my God, they're so neat, they're so tidy, they're so perfect. And they don't realize that actually it kind of hurts you taking it to that degree. Yeah. Again, and I wonder, I know somebody who was, during the pandemic, their knuckles and their hands were literally bleeding and red. About 2 weeks into the pandemic, where they had been washing their hands with those alcohol-based cleaners so often and literally scrubbing their hands 50 times a day, I don't fucking know. And their knuckles and hands were chafe. They were dry, so dry, papery dry, and it caused them huge pain, and they still couldn't stop. That would be an OCD that sort of developed there, an obsession and a ritual in order to clean away the bugs. Whereas the OCPD would be more just, you need it tidy, because if it's not neat and tidy, you're going to feel physically stressed out, physically uncomfortable, rage, irritable, pissed. Potentially, it will fuck your mood, upset you, ruin your whole fucking day without you realizing what's going on. Yeah, as long as it's not POCD, which is an obsessive fear of being or becoming a paedophile, what too many consider the ultimate loss of identity. As long as it's not POCD, you're all good. Paedophile OCD, the fear of being a paedophile. People living with POCD or paedophilia OCD. Oh God. Yeah, Bobo, me and you, we own OCPD, I know that. Speakers just came on so fucking loud, oh my God. I literally just headphones turned off and all the speakers were turned way up for some reason, and that was so loud, and I hope I didn't just wake everyone up. Where has tonight gone? Oh my God, it's 3 a.m. What the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck? When did it become 3 a.m? When did we 4 hours 20. We've been streaming 4 hours and 20 minutes. We've been streaming 4 hours and 20 minutes. 20 seconds. 21 seconds. 22 seconds. Oh, good fuck.